You're watching Cable 2.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. We could all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board Member Kaplan is going to give us our invocation as usual. Thank you.
Let us pray. Dear God, as we gather together tonight as a board, please help us to remain focused and respectful of one another as we do the important work that our community has entrusted us to do. Help us to not only be mindful, but also mind-kind as we work together for our common goals to help all of our children and educators in Forsyth County. Help us to always remember that the lives of our children are at stake, and we can't afford to waste a single second trying to make a difference in the quality of their lives. We are all equal in your eyes. God, please bless our superintendent, our board members, and their families. Amen.
Amen. Before we get started, I would just like to say that February is Black History Month, and I think we should recognize Black History Month because as a progressive community, we not only tolerate diversity, but we celebrate and grow from it. Thus, I would like to highlight the life and legacy of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who is the father of Black History Month because he founded Black History Week in 1916. Dr. Carter G. Woodson's legacies are the scholarly publication of the Journal of Negro History, which is housed at Howard University, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and lastly, he is the author of a timeless classic, The Miseducation of the Negro. Thank you. First, we need to review and approve the agenda, and I would say since we know we have to go back into closed session, we need to amend the agenda. So is there a motion to amend the agenda to put a closed session at the end? Second. All in favor? Okay, motion passes. Next, we have special recognitions with Brent Campbell.
So good evening, Chair Woodbury, members of the board, and Dr. Emery. I feel like a little bit of a proud father up here, even though I'm not nearly old enough to be this team's father, but I feel like a proud father to share some special recognitions for my team on the Marketing and Communications Department this past week that we received. Every year, the North Carolina School Public Relations Association honors districts for effective communications via what they call the Blue Ribbon Awards. These awards are the highest honor in our specific industry. The association says the winners of these awards are the leading examples of the best work in public relations. The award winners must demonstrate cutting-edge communications tactics, methods, and products that support schools and school districts and the sharing of their story. These awards are judged by the Georgia School Public Relations Association Board of Directors, and this year, I'm happy to say out of just over 300 award entries statewide, our team won 21 Blue Ribbon Awards. That's the most in our district's history. I had to throw that in there. And we received 12 of those were gold awards, which is the highest status, and 9 of those are silver awards. And we were third in the state for the most honors to be received by any district. And of course, we have a little quick video so you can see some of the things that we were honored for.
Engaged in
instruction for every scholar, every day, in every classroom.
The fact that she can see her own face on the cover of a book.
Oh my gosh, it worked! We want excellent instruction in every class, every day for every student.
What we've done in these two lots is basically merge the two lots together.
Let's look in your desk.
We personally welcome you back. Makes me so excited to see the kind of energy that you bring.
And there's just a great sense of family. Everyone works together.
But most importantly, you are the superheroes out there who make magic every day.
So everything that was in that was one of the award entries that we produced. So I'm so proud to introduce to you our Cable 2 team, which is Chris Runge and TJ James. And we're running this, as you know, we're running the meeting live on TV, and that's the control room that TJ's holding in his hand right now. They got 12 awards, including honors for Dr. Emery's talk show, our commercials that highlight the district and schools like Reynolds, Kimberly Park, and Gibson, our work explaining the Wiley Bond project over the summer construction project, our demographic-specific textbooks, and a few more. So congratulations to you guys. And then Kim Underwood is our communication specialist and web writer. And Kim is at Easton tonight because they had an event, and he's covering the event at Easton. So he won 2 awards for excellence in writing. His story, Scorpion Cupcakes and Worm Delight, which was a project about insect-filled recipes at Haynes Magnet School. And then he wrote a story called Acting in the Moment, and this was a story about a Mount Tabor student who happened upon a car accident and was able to pull the victim out to safety, a junior ROTC student. So Kim won those 2 awards. Our graphic artist, Francisco Martinez. His work on logos for branding such as the Teacher Academy, the Bully Prevention Month, and our Wear It Security Badge campaign, which I'm sure you're familiar with, were some of the winners from that. And then Evan Herod, who is our digital media manager. Evan's work incorporating all of these campaigns into our website and our digital platforms, and specifically the Digital Media Engagement Award for rolling out our mobile application, which is now on your cell phone, I hope. So anyway, our entire team for the marketing campaigns, we encompassed video, print materials, web materials, writing and photography, and the Student Parent Handbook, our core awards, the summer reading program, and again, the mobile app won overall awards. So thank you to this team, and thank you guys and all of our folks in the school system for giving us fantastic stories and doing some fantastic work for us to highlight every day.
I would just like to say, too, that Brent Campbell did not recognize himself, but he also received a certificate for his leadership with this team, and we really appreciate the hard work that all of them do for our district. Thank you. Next, we're going to go into the public comments on the agenda items. I would just like to remind us that this is a 3-minute only public comment, and because we have so many people excited to talk to us tonight, I'm going to probably not extend the additional minutes so that we can move in a timely manner tonight. So please do not feel one way or another about that. We're just trying to make sure we get out in a timely manner. But first, we have Michael Lishik. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name. Please give us your correct name when you come up. And his topic is dealing with buildings and grounds.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michael Lishke. My wife and I and our 4 children live in Kernersville. We have been active members in our public school system for 15 years, and by my calculations, we've got 10 more with the youngest. So May of 2028, we'll be sitting up front with the Walker parents. But I'm here to talk not specifically about an issue except some observation, and I sent you all an email today knowing that there's no way I'm getting this done in 3 minutes, so I will hit the highlights. What concerns me, and again, we've lived here and have been active members of our community for 22 years, what concerns me about this board is an absolute clear lack of trust that you appear to have amongst yourselves and with the community. And there's a lot of work that went into, and this all came out with, like everything, when it all gets down to scarce resources. So this all comes down. I've talked with a lot of you on the phone. My most recent conversation with Leah, who we've known for years. Our kids have grown up together. So this is not about what Reynolds gets or doesn't get. That's not what this is about for me. What this is about is a whole lot of time and energy went into that massive bond referendum that passed overwhelmingly. And to change that without clear public involvement in it is just wrong. And we can talk legal issues around conflict of interest, bias, whatever title you want to put on it, they're there. And what it was nice today in your meeting, earlier, your committee meetings, I actually heard for the first time some of that language coming out. So maybe we're getting back on the right path. So I share that observation with you. I think you have an opportunity like no other group has ever had to really engage with the community in these projects. There's obviously incredible passion for all the right reasons, and they're not easy discussions, they're not easy decisions. But I really encourage you, when people come up and talk and write you letters, and we get, and I get it, it has to be this way, the very polite, thank you for your thoughts and concerns, we'll take it under advisement. Why not invite those folks back into the conversation? If you really are going to do what all of you said during your campaigns, your hotly contested campaigns of more community engagement, I think that is a very reachable goal for you. It will take energy, I have no doubt, but I think people are willing to do it. There are a lot of really dedicated people who love this school system. I'm no different than them, but I will not invest my time and energy when it's ignored and patronized. So please engage with people, invite people in, and please get some work done amongst yourself in group dynamics and team development, because too much is writing for you not to do it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next we have Anna Goodman. Hey.
Hi, thank you. I'm with Michael. I agree with him. I was in the Building and Grounds meeting and the Finance meeting just now, and I was so proud of y'all because it was so much better than the Building and Grounds meeting last month, which alarmed, I think, everybody. And I'm just so glad y'all are getting it together and things are looking good. So that last meeting was what motivated me to get here tonight, because it sounded like, well, you did. That committee voted to knock down the Wiley Gym 1 year ahead of the bond schedule. And I was interested to look at the maps that came out, I think, with the agenda tonight. And I wanted to ask about, this is what the voters approved. This is the Wiley Gym without the stadium in the picture, and it shows a really nice clear path from Wiley over around. You can walk on the same side of the street as the school, and you can get to the Wiley Gym, and it looks really good. This is what the voters approved. But then we have this map that shows what happens if the stadium breaks ground before the gym project is complete. You have this picture with the kids have to come out here. You lose this parking lot where the buses are, so you got the buses all out here on Northwest Boulevard, which is already a bottleneck. And you have the kids crossing the street, and they have to walk on the other side of the road. And then they have to cross again to get to the gym for gym class, and that's 10 minutes each way, 2 street crossings each way, 300 kids each day. It's not a very safe situation. So I'm saying, whatever y'all do, don't let this stadium project break ground before the Wiley Gym is finished, because the Wiley Gym, you can see, the planners are moving the gym over to accommodate the stadium. They're leaving this whole footprint here for the stadium. The planners have already done everything they can to help the stadium along. And you lose all of this excellent planning here if you break ground on the stadium early, and it looks like the footprint is here, so there's no rush. If you rush this thing just to get a few extra months for the stadium, that's reckless, and it's not taking into account the needs of the Wiley students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Rhonda Mays from the FCAE.
Good evening, Chairwoman Woodbury, Dr. Emery, and the board. I am Rhonda Mays, a school social worker here in this district, serving as full-time release president of Forsyth County Association of Educators. I come before you once again to speak about the Wiley Gym, and to just say I was very pleased to get the outline, the detailed information concerning the options that are before you. And I think everyone in the community, as well as the educators, everyone is saying that students' needs are various concerning what different schools need. But we also have to look at what was approved in the bond and follow what the voters voted for. That's the biggest piece. And then once we do that, making certain that we are being good stewards of the monies that have been approved, that we're not spending more money on a project that we don't need to in the long run, because those funds could be used for another school or some other things that we need. We know our resources are limited. You know, there's been talks that there may be another bond sooner than later, but there may not be. Because as what has been said over and over in the community, if certain things don't happen and schools aren't built the way they need to be built, voters are not going to approve another bond. And we have to be mindful of that. Because if the voters don't approve a bond, that's going to limit what we can do as a school system. So please be mindful of what was approved and not overspend when and if it's not necessary to do so. And be mindful of the needs of all of our students across the district. We believe that, yes, the students at Reynolds should have their own space, but also this board has a practice of approving how different things are handled. And there's a timeline. And if that item has not been on that timeline yet, what are we doing and why are we talking about spending monies that have not been set aside for that? So I'm still looking and observing the information that keeps coming forward. Like I said, the information that we received was very detailed, and a lot was there and a lot more understanding. So thank you for making certain we had that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Snow White.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
Good evening.
Good evening. And Rhonda pretty much said everything that I was hoping to say, so I would just like to add on to that, that making changes to a bond after the voters have approved it is a breach of trust. Because this move would have an undisputed negative impact on Wiley students, cost over $250,000 extra, and no clear benefit has been stated, the change to the bond would be reckless. Choosing that option would seriously throw your judgment into question. Such an attempt at shuffling bond priorities makes a mockery of other school bonds, construction projects that are legitimately urgent. If you expect for the public to trust you, please behave in a way that deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Mark Lively. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Chairman Woodbury and the board. My name is Mark Lively. I live across Haynes Park from Wiley and Reynolds High School, and my grandson attends Brunson, so I'm very much invested in the school system here. I'm really concerned about the process by which this recommendation was made. That's really what I think I'm hearing from the other speakers as well. It appears that the proposal to accelerate the Wiley Gym project, which is currently number 16 out of 25 on the approved list, may have been made with inadequate consultation with the experienced staff members of the facilities and planning, construction and facilities. And several questions come to my mind. Did the committee evaluate the potential impact that the change would have and the cost would have on other projects? Was the committee aware that it was going to cost another $325,000 perhaps for one of the options? Is it really worth $325,000 to move this schedule up by just a few months? Tonight we heard 3.5 months. The schedule looks like it might be 9 months. The real question comes down to, will there be enough bond money in the end? Because even without changing the schedule, it seems likely that the approved bonds in 2016 are going to come up short because construction costs are higher. Bids have come in about 16% higher than they were originally proposed in setting the budget for the bond. Projects may have to be cut in order to meet those, to spend the money appropriately. So any unplanned schedule changes to one or more projects may delay the sufficient funds that are available. So what's the impact and the shortfall of funds? The design phase of Ashley currently is last on the list, only $900,000 allocated. Did the committee consider that other projects phasing options before they made this decision? Could the acceleration of the Wiley project delay the planning or execution of any of the others? What about the Philo project, Easton or Brunson? Those are all on the schedule prior to the Wiley. What are the facts that justify accelerating the Wiley project in the first place? What facts warrant altering the schedule of a carefully planned? And will those changes incur unplanned expenses that will push other projects lower on the list? So to me, that it's really important that we have thoughtful appropriation of taxpayer dollars, and that these are difficult questions and balance a lot of issues. It appears to me that the newly constituted Building and Grounds Committee has not given adequate consideration for the facts before making this decision and passing it on to the full board. I think that I believe that the recommendation of the board tonight is poorly justified. It's based on inadequate review and evaluation, and I urge the vote to not consider it and not to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Betsy Burton Trunk, I think.
Close.
Okay. Please give us your correct last name.
Hey, my name is Betsy Burton Strunk. I'm the mother of a really awesome 7th grader.
Absolutely.
I completely appreciate and understand the complexity of every issue, and I really appreciate people, like, frankly, having the nerve and the confidence to come up and talk about it. My issue is a little bit different. I don't have skin in the game with the Reynolds Stadium. My concern is specific to the Wiley Gym, is getting a facility where people feel safe, where folks that are visually impaired, that are physically impaired, that are needing to be compliant with the Americans with Disability Act, dealing with accessibility, that does not exist. There are some accommodations made. It's shocking to me, frankly, that we haven't been cited, and perhaps we have, I haven't done the research, but to have a scenario where You walk into a facility and you can't use the bathroom because the wheelchair doesn't fit. Now, there may be ways to fix this without having to address the bond issues or without having to address a big full-scale transition. The challenge I think we have is there's always going to be something, right? There are going to be competing demands that are always going to be a real challenge. We're going to have issues where people aren't ready to move forward with whatever their initiatives are, and so we have to be flexible. But as a mom of a 7th grader and walking into the gym and seeing the inability for people to feel comfortable on the floor, to be able to use the gym for other revenue generating opportunities like the Y. We used to play at the Y all the time when my son was young. I said, why don't we play at Wiley anymore? It's not a safe place for the rest of us. There are much better facilities. And people may think, gosh, this is just a gym, but it's more than that. It's an opportunity for everybody to get together, to engage and to play and to be kids. And so it's not that I don't appreciate all the complexity and all of the competing demands and all of the financial challenges associated with it, but as a mom with a kid who I want to get to play and feel safe, that's where I'm coming from tonight. So I hope 3 months, 9 months, I know we mentioned several different changes. My son's not going to be there to be able to take advantage of it, but if it helps any other kid, 3 months makes a huge difference. So I hope that you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura Nielsen. Laura Nielsen. Oh, sorry.
Hello, Chairwoman Woodbury, Superintendent Emery, and board members. My name is Laura Nealon, and I have 3 kids at Paisley, Wiley, and Whitaker. I come here to speak as a current Wiley parent who is in favor of accelerating the Wiley project, starting with the releasing of the funds for the design work. I'm so glad to see that there are options on the table that will not cost taxpayers any more money, and it will give opportunities to students to learn and grow in a safe and learning environment. I feel this should not be a point of debate because we need to hear from experts about how to best move forward with this project. A new secure and accessible front entry and gym, along with new STEAM classrooms, would promote their magnet vision for daughters such as mine. I also want to address previous comments made regarding the Reynolds Stadium, as I am a parent of 3 future demons. Many have tried to entangle the two, but they each stand on their own. I just ask that you put yourselves in my shoes as I think about my daughters having to change in their cars, play and practice all over town, and not having the opportunity to be part of the true high school community where students can simply just walk across their campus to cheer on their friends. I thank you for your time and dedication to our schools. I'm a voter, and I place my votes in all of you because I do trust your judgment as we deal with complicated and difficult issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Coyne.
Hi, I'm John Coyne. I live on 214 North Hawthorne Drive. First of all, I appreciate earlier at the Building and Grounds meeting, Ms. Crowley, that you clarified that part of what was being advanced was the money for design. I missed that at the meeting. I was at that meeting. What I do remember is that there was a lot of talk about the extension of the construction period. It was about starting the construction period earlier and also extending the construction period. I agree with a lot of the comments that were made about Wiley Gym. It does need to be replaced. It's on bonds. I mean, it is a project that we're doing. So I agree with that. I think one of the things I really want to talk about is the safety issue that keeps coming up with Wiley. You know, this project was approved to begin in 2020. The construction schedule was carefully researched and explored by the facilities department and was the best option from a safety perspective to minimize the impact of the students and coordinate construction after the Business 40 construction happened. I think this is a really important point. You know, previous boards knew about this and the issues surrounding the traffic and the drop-off of the Wiley School. The gym needs to be replaced, no question. But the safety issue, while there are many things that need to be addressed, really isn't inside the gym, it's outside. It's the traffic. I mean, honestly, it's about the traffic. In 2017, in April, a Wiley student was struck by a car. He was outside the building. At that point, the board had already approved a new traffic and drop-off improvements for Wiley, and it was in the 2016 bond package. Construction was completed this summer. Some of those images we saw were from that. The situation was much better. The traffic solution, I think, was really working. I live right there. I see it. But with the Business 40 closing, we've seen an increase at that corner by about 5 times. Because the traffic is so backed up, students, once again, are hopping out of cars. They're not waiting to go through the drop-off. They're getting off at Northwest Boulevard. They're getting off at Hawthorne Road. They're getting out in traffic. So the conditions now are actually worse than what they were when the student was hit by a car. Most of the options that you're discussing tonight extend the demolition and construction period, and they coincide with the I-40 closing. I think that's very problematic. Some of the options show the staging area going where the Wiley bus lot is, and moves the buses. It would mean the construction trucks. It would mean drop off for students, and material deliveries are all happening on Northwest Boulevard. It just compounds those unsafe conditions that are happening right now. None of this, I think, bodes well for student safety. I think if accelerating the gym demo is truly about safety of students, you would not advance it until the I-40 construction is finished. Thank you.
Next, we have Langdon Oberman.
Good evening. I'm Langdon Oberman. I'd like to address 2 issues on the Wiley Gym project. First, one thing that's not been made clear is why what I've understood was beginning the demolition early, why that's necessary. We hear tonight that there's no proposal to start the demolition early, that it's just design. I'll come back to that in a minute. But different reasons were given, and at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting on the 22nd, it was stated that the reason is that Wiley's had a safety complaint. Somebody mentioned they weren't sure. It has a safety issue and a complaint from the Department of Education, and that the gym project therefore needed to be moved earlier in order to comply. However, as the staff stated in that meeting, and that the safety complaint has been resolved, there's an agreement between the superintendent and the Department of Education, and here's the signed resolution. There's also conflicting information on costs, but 4 options have been developed by staff, and they're posted on the website, and I understand they're going to be discussed by y'all tonight. I'm, again, unclear about whether demolition's in there, but among those options, one of them proposes an additional cost of $325,000. Another one is over $500,000, $600,000. This is a project, this gym, that's going to happen anyway. It's not a matter of whether there's going to be a new gym. And with the new gym, the deficiencies will be corrected. Nevertheless, this brings me to my second item, and that is that this proposal, I don't think, helps Wiley students. I think a lot of the options hurt Wiley students, and several of speakers have mentioned that before. And yet parents have not been notified, and parents haven't been given any explanation of the things that are going to be discussed tonight. As other speakers have said, moving that start date, John mentioned this, creates traffic and dangerous drop-off situation that the current schedule avoids. It may also lengthen the time that the students are without a nearby gym. These are middle school students. They're only at Wiley for 3 years, and with a change, some of them will have this disruption most of the time they're there. I don't understand why Wiley parents aren't being asked to weigh in. At tonight's Building and Grounds meeting, y'all set up meetings for Brunson parents and meetings for Ashley parents, but not for Wiley parents, and yet here's an issue that you know from all this happened in the last 2 weeks with letters to the editor and letters to members of the board and to all the people speaking here tonight, It's of great concern to people, and yet the parents haven't been told that this is going on. So overall, I'm concerned about those and about making changes, fiscal changes and policy changes without full opportunity for public input. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ellen Knott. Ellen or Elin Knott.
Oh.
Sorry, I may have mispronounced your name.
Hi, my name's Ellen Knott. I live on Linwood Avenue. I'd like to read for the committee here tonight, the board, a letter that was sent and published in the Winston-Salem Journal last Saturday by Steve Rapp, who could not be here tonight. To quote Yogi Berra, it's like deja vu all over again. There may be a bait and switch going on involving Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Board of Education and Home Field Advantage, a private group keen on building a football stadium at Wiley Middle School. I strongly support sports for our students. I was a student athlete years ago and have benefited over my lifetime from what I learned on courts and fields. What I can't support is prioritizing a stadium over pressing educational needs for safe buildings, adequate staffing, and basic learning materials needed to give all students an education. Some members of the current school board appear to be strategizing with Home Field Advantage to redirect taxpayer dollars to pay for the stadium, although in 2012, Home Field Advantage promised to pay for the entire $6.2 million away from other needs to pay for it. We don't need a stadium ahead of other needs, and Home Field Advantage isn't going to pay for it. We taxpayers are going to be stuck with the tab unless we demand more responsible leadership from our elected school board members and school leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Rapp.
Next, we have Alan Daniel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Alan Daniel. I'm a parent of 2 students in the system. I define integrity as how one behaves when one knows there are no consequences for misbehavior. This board in its short life has shown a disturbing lack of integrity. We were promised transparency. What we have gotten since before the election are backroom deals. In 2012, Home Field Advantage came to the school board with a proposal to build a football stadium for R.J. Reynolds High School. They would raise the private funds necessary to relocate the current Wiley gym, as there was not sufficient space on school-owned property to build the stadium with the gym in its present location, and then build the stadium. The discussion was, the agreement was that construction would not start on the stadium until all funds were in hand. In 2016, the school board presented a bond referendum to the citizens for capital improvements in new schools. Slipped into that bond referendum were funds to move the Wiley gym because HFA had not been able to raise funds necessary. Most often when a nonprofit is unable to raise funds for a project, it is because there is insufficient support for that project. More backroom deals. In the bond project list dated January 16, 2016, there was no mention of Ashley Elementary, though there should have been. On the November 7th ballot, it begins, shall the order adopted on August 8, 2016. In the proposed cash flow project order downloaded today, dated August 9th, 2016, there's a $900,000 in there for Ashley Design. More backroom deals. In 2018, suddenly the discussion turned to using taxpayer dollars to build the stadium. That has never been part of the discussion, at least not the public discussion, which is where, by state law, all business of this body is to be conducted. 2 weeks ago, this board heard from the Building and Grounds Committee a plan to flush $325,000 down the toilet to speed up the demolition of the Wiley Gym. This plan serves no educational purpose. It only serves to get the gym out of the way of the stadium. More backroom deals. I cannot tell this board and the power brokers in the community who support such bovine manure how disappointed I am and how disgusted I am with each and every one of you. We have the worst urban district in the state of North Carolina, and you are playing politics with a stadium. Not one penny or 1 second should be spent on athletic facilities when we have crumbling, overcrowded schools, underpaid staff, and such low staff morale. It's a sin and a disgrace. Thank you.
Next, we have Jan Wharton.
Thank you. I'm here actually not to talk about Wiley, I'm here to talk about Brunson. And I'm a Brunson parent and a longtime Brunson supporter. And I just, as a lot of people have said tonight, a lot of time and effort went into the 2016 bond. There was an extensive public input process. Priorities were made and adjusted. Some very worthy projects fell off of the bond, things that I didn't agree with. But then the final bond proposal was presented to the public, and the public approved this and voted for this overwhelmingly in every precinct. And I wanted, now Brunson, I want to talk specifically about Brunson. Brunson is a wonderful school that serves a very diverse group of students. And I have watched in about the 10 years that I've been involved with Brunson, watched Brunson be pushed off of bond after bond after bond. And at the same time, also watched the school's condition deteriorate. I cannot count the number of times that I've heard we can't do that maintenance project at Brunson, we can't do that improvement project at Brunson because Brunson's going to be rebuilt. And this has been going on for at least 10 years that I know of, that I've personally have experienced. So but this time actually Brunson made it on the bond. And it is now to the point where Brunson, my understanding is that the money to buy property to build Brunson on will be released in March next month, and that the property could be purchased as early as April. And I'm asking you to please abide by that timeline, and to go ahead and honor that the will of the voters to have that included in the bond. And I know, I mean, the other thing I really ask for is transparency. I've heard a lot of rumors about backdoor deals or closed door deals that have been made that I hope are not true. And I really think it's important for the public to be involved as much as possible. I appreciate the fact that there is an Ashley meeting and a Brunson meeting coming up for public input. And I just ask that you keep the public in the loop as much as possible so that you continue to build trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michelle Jordan.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Woodbury,
Good evening.
Dr. Emery, and board members. I too am here to speak specifically about Brunson. I'm here on behalf of the students and the staff and all of us that work there, and talking about what they've already mentioned, the fact that it's been voted on this bond that's going forward, and that the community approved this, and that we've been pushed off of bond project after bond project after bond project, that we're sitting there in a school that is deteriorating, falling down. I think I was told tonight that we're the worst facility in the entire school system. So, I mean, I'm working in a building that we have the roofs leaking constantly, the pipes are leaking, it's dripping mold everywhere. We have rat infestations, mice that we catch and release outside constantly, cockroaches that are the size of your thumb, mold, windows that don't close. Like I have these teeny little latches that latch my windows that don't close all the way, so we constantly have, you know, our HVAC system, it's 85 degrees upstairs in our, that's why I'm in a t-shirt. I wear them during the winter because it's 85 degrees upstairs now that they've fixed the system. And here we sit. So we just want to make sure that as we're going forward, that Brunson is not pushed back aside. Like she mentioned, Ms. Morton mentioned, that I've been hearing rumors of some backroom deals that are going on, and that Brunson might be one of the things that's put on the chopping block in order to make that happen. So I just hope that that will not happen going forward, and that the schools that need the facilities taken care of get taken care of, and that there's transparency in what's going forward with all of these projects, including Reynolds Stadium. I work at the school that feeds into that, so I know the socioeconomic status. People think that everyone around that area, somebody the other day told me, oh, all the wealthy students at Brunson. I'm like, we're 100% free and reduced lunch. Where is this perception? So I get that there needs to be a stadium, but that doesn't need to be high on a priority when we have places like Brunson and Ashley and others that are unhealthy for us to be working in and our children to be learning in. So I just hope that as we go forward that you guys stick to the timeline, that we see that money is released in March, that there's land purchase in April, and that we have a new school being built on the timeline that we've said. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Bill Gibson.
I'm Bill Gibson. I live at 1315 Brookstown Avenue. Board member Leah Crowley's push to accelerate the time for the demolition of the gymnasium at Wiley Middle School constitutes a serious error of judgment on her part. I'm sure that Ms. Crowley is ordinarily an honorable person. No problem about that. Unfortunately, it appears that her impatient zeal for Reynolds High School athletes to enjoy a so-called home field advantage over their opponents has blinded her to her ethical obligation as a member of the Board of Education, specifically to adhere faithfully to this board's policy on conflicts of interest. Any honest reading of the conflicts of interest policy makes it evident that Mrs. Crowley does labor under a conflict of interest when it comes to the Wiley Gym issue. At the very minimum, she has created the appearance of a conflict of interest. That in itself constitutes a violation of the express terms of Section 4 of the conflicts policy. Now let's get real. Accelerating the Wiley Gym project is designed to enhance the fundraising efforts for the Reynolds Stadium project. Board member Crowley's husband is the coach of the Reynolds High School football team. Coaches whose teams compile losing records often lose their jobs. Coaches with winning records can make a pretty good living for themselves and their families. I respectfully submit that Mrs. Crowley stands to derive a direct economic benefit from the stability and success of her husband's current employment. When taxpayers and voters consider whether or not to support a school bond proposal or a candidate for a position on the Board of Education, you want them to think integrity, not shenanigans. You need the taxpayers and voters to feel confident that all the members of the Board of Education are acting in an ethical manner. And you need the taxpayers to feel confident that the Board of Education conducts its business as a trustworthy institution. Now here's an opportunity for each of you to give the voters a reason to believe in your integrity. As an ethical member of this board, Mrs. Crowley should recuse herself from voting on the Wiley Gym acceleration issue, as well as on anything else having to do with the stadium project. And as for the acceleration issue, which in whatever form is before you tonight, the rest of you, as members of a trustworthy institution, should cast your votes against the pending recommendation of the Building and Grounds Committee. Thank you.
Next, we have Tara Rose.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Tara Rose. I'm the parent of a first grade student at Brunson, and I'll also be speaking about the Wiley Gym project. So as we know, the Building and Grounds Committee voted on January 22nd to move up the timeline of the Wiley Gym project, changing a timeline voters approved in 2016. An article that appeared yesterday in the Winston-Salem Journal reported that following that meeting, quote, staff has since put together 4 different options for the board to discuss at Tuesday's full board meeting, which we know because it's on the agenda. But what would have been more appropriate is if the Building and Grounds Committee had formally presented those options before they voted to accelerate the project. According to another Winston-Salem Journal article from January 23rd, quote, "Details of what that acceleration would look like are not currently available, a fact that raised concerns from committee members as well as other members of the school board." So it would appear that committee members who voted in favor of advancing this project went into that meeting on January 22nd determined to move the decision out of committee without having those details in place. Otherwise, why would they have voted as they did? So when you all make major decisions without regard for process, without considering input from your colleagues or staff, not to mention input from community members, we must reasonably conclude that you have a transparency problem. The school board must make key decisions that address widespread inequity within our entire school system. This recent disregard for process does not instill confidence in your ability to make those decisions fairly. So I'm just asking that you please do better immediately, beginning with this discussion tonight. Prove to us that you are proceeding ethically with consideration for all students, teachers, and families in this school district. Thank you.
Next, we have Julie Magnus.
Hey, I'm Julie Magnus, and I'm a teacher at Diggs Latham Elementary School, but I also have a 32-year association with Brunson Elementary School. I used to live up on the hill on Linwood Avenue above the school, and my 4 nieces and nephews all went to Brunson Elementary. I also ran a after-school gymnastics program for several years, during which time the bridge was flooded and the whole downstairs of Brunson was pretty much flooded. The tile floor was floating at Brunson. Multiple times, I know of twice, they've had to pump concrete underneath the office at Brunson because when that creek really floods, it erodes under the school. Brunson keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and there are actually, we could have a 100-year storm, we could have a 1,000-year storm, they don't happen often, and we might be looking at a real emergency situation with Brunson, as opposed to, gee, we can't do this construction project, we can't do this maintenance project because Brunson is going to be replaced. It could be you're looking at another situation where you're going to have to find another place for more students to go to school in the short term. This school has structural issues because of the floodplain it's in and because of the history of problems that have already been there. I have picked up my niece and nephews from that school when the bridge has flooded. I believe the kids were picked up in the back parking lot here in this past year. I don't know, is that right, Michelle? This is a school that's got real safety issues and does not need to be bumped back again in any way. Money needs to be held tight for Brunson Elementary School. So I'm up here begging you and standing strong behind Brunson Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Anna Rubin.
Good evening. My name's Anna Rubin. I'm a parent of a student at Brunson and also one who will be there next year. And what I love about Brunson is how diverse it is. My son has African American and Hispanic and other white students and Asian and African refugees in his class. I went on a field trip today, that's why I'm wearing this shirt, with them, and I love that about Brunson, and I think that is what makes it really awesome and unique, and I hope that that's taken into consideration when a new site is chosen, that it will still pull from a variety of areas. But I also want to talk tonight as a teacher. I've been a teacher in the district for about 10 years, elementary, middle, and high school. I'm currently an ESL teacher, and
I teach students from a variety of countries, Asia, Africa, and Spanish-speaking countries, and we have a real problem with not having access to interpreters in this district. So even our Spanish-speaking students, we do not have enough interpreters. David Sisk and his team do the best that they can, but they are not able to fulfill all the requests for state and federally mandated meetings that we must have with parents and with students, and I find that completely unacceptable, to be honest. And so I come here to speak on behalf of my students because many of their parents either can't or would be afraid to do that. And so I hope that that is something that's taken into consideration, because I see that as a major hindrance to equity that is often overlooked because these families aren't able to come speak up for themselves. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening.
Next, we have Emily Schultz.
Hi, Anna queued me up nicely. Thank you, Anna.
Good evening.
I'm Emily Shutt. I am representing Action for Equity, which morphed out of Action for Ashley. I'm here to remind you all of our requests of you that we presented in December, just highlighting them again. Action for Equity seeks to advocate for equity for students in our school system and academic achievement, access to high-quality instruction, and safe and healthy school environments. We believe these goals will help build a more effective and stronger community in our county. We ask the board act upon the recommendations to advance equity in our school. For equity, we would love for you all to expand on the core value of equity, which you all define as, did we honor diversity by addressing barriers to success for every student? That's a great example there that Anna just gave. We asked the school board members complete a comprehensive racial equity training, which some of you are, and I'll be there too, in March. Guide and support the superintendent to expand personnel and funding for an Office of Equity, which will serve students, teachers, and staff district-wide. To complete an organizational equity analysis among the superintendent and executive cabinet members, and to form a racial equity task force that includes community members, school staff, parents, students, and other stakeholders. Orange County, North Carolina has recently, actually over the past few years, has undertaken this and come out with their results. That's really interesting to look into the work that they've done there. In reference to the achievement gap, we seek to hold the school system accountable to its following goals, listed on the website. By 2020, 90% of third graders will read on or above grade level. Right now, it's 52%, I believe, are proficient third graders. By 2018, our graduation rate will be 90%. It is now 2019. By 2018, we will close the achievement gap between subgroups by 10 percentage points while increasing the performance of all subgroups. That did not happen in 2018. We ask the school board communicates on the progress and the status of these goals and create a multi-year plan that is a result of collaboration with community organizations, parents, and stakeholders that focuses on closing the achievement gap. And finally, we ask for healthy and safe school infrastructure, which we've heard of many times already this evening. We ask for a measurable resolution for the complaint filed with the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights regarding Ashley Academy to build a new Ashley and address the interim infrastructure problems, and develop a matrix and infrastructure plan that focuses on equity. Guilford County Schools recently released that they did something like this, a comprehensive overview of their infrastructure, and an analysis of suspensions and expulsions and school-based referrals to the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joshua Zeeson.
Good evening, Chairwoman Woodbury,
Good evening.
board members, Dr. Emery. I can't believe no one has mentioned this yet, but I just wanted to congratulate you, Dr. Emery, on your new position. I'll admit, when I saw the headline, I was a little scared that you had just resigned and you were just gone. So I'm glad to see that you're still here, but wish you the best in your future role. I'm not going to talk about the building and grounds because I feel like you all have heard that a lot tonight. But one theme I've noticed that I just can't help but point attention to is this theme of transparency, which I've talked a lot about in previous meetings. But one thing I'm really seeing on display tonight is that it's very easy for rumors to start developing. And I don't think that you all are intentionally trying to be like secretive. And I understand that politics is a very complicated thing, and you all know lots of things that we can't even begin to understand. But I have noticed that the lack of information that we're getting, I think, is really metabolizing. I'm really feeling it in this room right now, just that people are really angry and frustrated. And I just really encourage you, I think that transparency is just always a good thing. I can't help but think of Jeff Bezos right now, and kind of like, he just kind of went out there with what was going on, and even though it was super embarrassing for him, it's amazing how he's just been able to kind of take control of the narrative. And I'm not saying any of you have any illicit pictures that are motivating your behavior, but I would say, I think that, it just comes to mind for me, and I think that transparency tends to, I really hope you don't have inappropriate pictures. We don't want to see that. And the other thing I'm noticing is I feel like that it's just pitting us against each other, and it's really painful for me to see people just kind of fighting against each other. Of course, there's going to be competing demands, competing priorities. I have my own opinions on that too, but I really think that by being transparent and kind of really engaging and leading this community in a conversation, it could be really, really helpful. The thing I really wanted to talk about tonight, I've already lost 2 of my minutes, so I'll have to continue this in the public comments, but I really wanted tonight to talk about what happened 2.5 weeks ago at Reagan, which we also haven't talked about at all tonight. So I know we were all a lot of us in this room were shocked by the racist video that was posted. I really want to speak to something I've heard a lot at these school board meetings about.
So, Mr. Zissou.
This is in response to the Finance Committee. So let me link it to Finance. I promise this is connected. So the reason that I think that this is connected to the Finance Committee is I would ask for there to be a release of funds that we need to hire someone to be a trainer for diversity and inclusion.
So,
okay.
So
I can wait if I need to wait, but I will.
So if you could just wait to the public comments, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Please spend money on that as well.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go into discussion items. And the first item is the Title IV Technology Plan Overview. Marty Creech is coming up, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, and Brittany Guy.
Good evening, Chair Woodbury, members of the board, and Dr. Emery. I'm Brittany Guy, sorry, to introduce myself. I'm Brittany Guy, and with me is Marty Creech, and we want to take some time to share with you our district's plan and current usage of funds around the student support and academic enrichment grants, which are Title IV-A. So this is, Title IV-A is relatively new funds for the past couple of years that are authorized to help LEAs meet 3 specific goals. One being that we can provide a well-rounded education, that we maintain safe and healthy students, and that we support the effective use of technology. So we're going to share just around that 3rd goal, supporting the effective use of technology and what we have currently going on. So for me, my work is in personalized learning in the district, and we wanted to take a moment first to kind of give you a little bit of a backdrop and some numbers around what each of us has going on. So with personalized learning in the district, we are focused on leveraging the instructional strategies, the tools, the current research to be able to meet the needs of each learner in a classroom. So for us, there are 4 components of personalized learning. One being the learner, focused on student autonomy, and then learner mastery, as well as the learning environment and the learning experience of students in a classroom. We currently provide professional development resources to all schools in the district, but we have some sort of other layer of support for 60 schools. And within those schools, we have PL teacher leaders in certain schools that I'll talk more about in just a second, as well as Team for Tomorrow schools, where there's a school-wide initiative that we're supporting administration and teachers. And then we also have standards-based grading in K-2 in certain schools in the district, and that's with a rollout plan district-wide. Additionally, we have more than 300 early education teachers that we integrate with our Office of Early Learning to support them together in standards-based grading, as well as our early learning partners have an individual teacher goal plan to build those teachers' capacities around our 4 components. And then finally, we have 81 PL teacher leaders in our district right now who represent K-12, who represent all subject areas, and represent about 27 schools. So they're pretty spread out. And these teachers have the goal of becoming model personalized learning classrooms so that we can start some in-district visits and be able to show teachers who might have a similar population or a similar grade level what this could really look like here in Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools. Because sometimes the idea itself is very abstract and it's hard for teachers to imagine what it might look like. So with those teachers, they each have individual plans, and then we provide coaching as well as a measurement plan to look at what impact we're having as they try to reach a model classroom, which would be putting together all 4 of our components.
So Brittany and I have presented together many times, but it's usually working in the room and facilitating the workshop. So we were like, who's going to take which part and where we're at? So your slides may be in a different order, but that's the reason is it's usually like just kind of like we only have 1 microphone and 1 podium right now. But I wanted to share a little bit about digital teaching and learning and what we're doing in the district. The state now mandates that each teacher have 2 digital learning competencies, and the 4 major focus area of the digital learning competencies are digital citizenship, content and instruction, data and assessment, and leadership in technology. And then we're focused on all schools. We're working with all schools. In my group, we always have 1 technology credit for the district, and my 6 DTL coaches have been sufficient for that. So doubling that amount with the same amount, we've had to work a little bit different. And with this, we've tried to work with the teachers in their PDP goals and not really giving them something extra to do, just their same instructional goal, but then how can technology help them get to that goal. And with this, we're no longer, 99% of our PD is no longer us talking in front of them and them listening, because we don't reach all teachers that way, just like we don't reach all students that way, the importance of personalized learning. So we've tried to personalize the PD where the teachers get to choose what they want to do and reach their goals, and it's all aligned. So that's what we worked on. And with the admin have their DLCs also that they have to get. So instead of pulling all the admin to the district office or all the assistant principals or all the instructional facilitators, my coaches, when they go out to schools, work with the principals to work on the vision at their school for technology in their school, work for, with the content and instruction pieces, looking at data behind Discovery Ed as an example, and what's being used in our district and what's not being used, and what we could do to improve the usage. We are working with the media coordinators in the district, because when we all went to school, we went to the media center, or the library as they were called then, and went there, looked at the encyclopedia, copied stuff out of the encyclopedia on a little note card, and made a research paper. But that's changing a little bit with technology, because they're not the only source in the school with this robust amount of information. We've got computers in our hands. So they're still helping with the whole research component, but they're also transforming into the design and helping kids design and innovate in their area. So outside of this Title IV grant is the DLI grant that we wrote, where we're pulling media coordinators in to help them with this transition that we're calling a learning commons. So they're traditional programming, books, research, and then adding the makerspace component into it. And then we have that's a component that's helping us out a lot is building capacity at the school level. My 6 DTL coaches know everything, not everything, a lot about PowerSchool, SchoolNet, Discovery Ed, Promethean, but they are only there every month and a half. So we have to have experts at the building that when they have issues with the Promethean boards or spend a lot of money on that, when they're having issues or needing to know how to use it or how to use it in their instruction, they have experts at the school. So that's a big component of where we're spending our Title IV money, what our digital teaching and learning coaches are doing this year. So with Title IV monies, where Brittany, Title IV has the other two goals, the first and second goal, but the effective use of technology. We have to spend it on high-quality PD for educators and leaders to personalize learning and improve achievement, build technology capacity, and then carry out innovative blended learning projects. So this is what we're working with. We're working with trying to increase collaboration with our content areas. We call it upstairs, that's second floor. Technology is on the first floor, second floor is the instructional services area. So we're trying to work with our science folks and our social studies folks so that when they're delivering their PD on ecosystems and how to teach ecosystems, they're integrating the technology and the digital components with that. We're working with the Office of Early Learning in their standards-based grading and really getting that PD out there and really understanding the technology and then the philosophy behind standards-based grading, world languages, and then district leaders. And I wanted to share with on the district leaders piece. Brittany and I have been working with the state on their ESSA. Goal number 2 is personalized learning. And we've been working with how the state is going to roll out personalized learning to the rest of the state. And Brittany's been asked to actually go and present what the work she's been doing here in Forsyth County is to the state, and she presents that in March. So that's really, really great that the state is seeing the work that she's doing and we're doing here in the district and the teachers. And so really trying to increase collaboration with the instructional areas is our focus with this money. And then building the capacity, we pull teachers to give them the days to really deep dive, because it's hard to deep dive into technology after school, a couple hours after school. So we're pulling them, really giving them a robust training on how to use the technology and then how to share back out to their staff. And then increasing the partnership opportunities. I know this money's funding 2 of her coaches, personalized learning coaches, supplementing the Verizon grant that I was talking about the other day. Verizon gives us a portion of the money. This money is helping us with the coaches, the supplemental piece of that. And then Reading Railroad was a grant that Jackie Pearson wrote, and this is the last year of that. It wrote in a digital teaching and learning coach, but we were running out of money, so this is supplementing the rest of that so that we would have that person for the entire school year instead of just a portion of it.
So additionally, just in looking at our own teams, we need the capacity to really understand not only the digital tools side of it, but the instructional strategies, the current research, so that we stay abreast of those things. So we are using part of the funds for workshops from experts, conferences, and then we are very excited to be able to partner with New York City Public Schools to collaborate with them about how they're leveraging personalized learning to address equity issues. So that is something that my team is very excited about, being able to look into and really dig into the research around mastery learning and how it creates a more equitable environment for all of our students. For those teachers that I mentioned earlier, the 81 that we're really looking at helping them become model classrooms so that we can facilitate more growth across the district. We are, according to their individual plans for what their gaps were, when we chose these, we really looked at willingness. We didn't look at test scores, we just, are you willing to change your practice towards things that are research-based? So we built our framework with that in mind and with the idea that there should be an entry point for every teacher. It doesn't matter the grade level, the subject area, or our current skill set, there's an entry point there. So for all of these teachers, they're at their different entry points, and we have PD opportunities personalized to them according to that. So paying for substitutes so that they can learn more, local opportunities, P-TECH offerings that are in our region, NCAT, and then some other workshops just according to their goals. And then district-wide, we do many things for supporting personalized learning across the district. We have ongoing PD opportunities where all schools are invited and represented. We are holding a personalized learning summit in building the foundation, building interest, and getting people started on where is my entry point so that I can know where to begin. We're this coming summer looking at a standards-based grading boot camp that again is going to, before the year start, build some capacity for school leaders and a teacher representing kindergarten, first and second grade in those schools. And then we also develop resources, exemplars, and then research for each of those 4 components. And we really feel that that's important because we want teachers to have some examples, and we feel that the research is important because that gives them the why, and it helps them have tough conversations sometimes with parents and even school leaders who may not be familiar with some of the things that they're doing. As we look towards the future, some things that are already in works that we'll probably be putting into our plan for next year, we are looking at more CSI and TSI school support and being a part of the training that they're going to need around differentiation, so working with Dr. Roseborough with that. Beginning teacher startup with our blended learning components, really working with teachers as they enter our system to build some foundational skills so that hopefully we can retain them. Just looking at increased infusion with the different content areas, as Marty mentioned earlier, because sometimes as a teacher we can feel like everything is being thrown at us. But if we can create kind of an umbrella where we're tying it together for them and showing us this is what a classroom looks like, then hopefully that's going to be more successful from a professional learning standpoint. And then finally, in district classroom visits, we hope to really have some of our model classrooms up and going so that we can begin to bring administrators and teachers from across the district, or maybe some of you, to see what those classrooms look like. And I think that's all we have to share.
That is a real last slide. I don't know what your last slide is. What questions can we answer?
When do you think you'll have the summit, the personalized learning summit?
I think we are checking on location still. We're hoping for July, and I can get you the exact dates, but I don't have them off the top of my head.
Okay.
Are you going to guest speak for us?
I will.
Yay.
Yeah, we did a summit like that in Guilford County, and it was very robust, so I definitely want to be engaged with you guys.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Any other questions or comments for this group? Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Our next discussion item is the Wiley Gym projects option with Darrell Walker and Colin Moore.
So good evening, Dr. Emery, Madam Chair, and members of the Board of Education. I'm Colin Moore. I'm the Director of Facility Planning and Construction. I wanted to start off the presentation tonight by taking a look at our bond as a whole, as the whole 2016 bond project. What I have highlighted, and this is a sheet that you received at the January 8th Building and Grounds meeting when we gave you an update on the bond projects. But what I want to focus on for a few minutes tonight are the projects that are highlighted in yellow on the sheet that you've received. And these are what we commonly refer to as our Phase 2 projects. Phase 2 being what phase of the funding that we're getting from the county commissioners. They all kind of roll together, but the majority of the funding for these 5 projects kind of fall in that Phase 2. I want to look at the work that we're doing for the new Louisville Middle School and Easton. You can tell by on this schedule we're well into the design on both of those projects. We are dealing with some issues that come up during design, so we're working through those design. But you can tell, and we are tracking with what our schedule shows here with our design progress. Philo Hill has an extent, you can tell from the schedule, has an extended design period because of some options that we're looking at there. Then you look down at, we've got Brunson and Wiley, which are showing by the red dash line is kind of our data date line of what today's date is. You can see that we're in the planning phases for both of those projects with design slated to start in the next 2 to 3 months. So we are currently tracking on schedule with the projects in the Phase 2 part of this bond. Brunson and Wiley both setting to go forward with design in the next 2 to 3, 4 months. And that's a factor of cash flow. So as we roll into the presentation tonight with the PowerPoint that you have on your that you have access to, I want to tell you kind of where we got to where we are. So it's been referenced to the January 22nd Building and Grounds meeting when staff was asked to consider some options for the Wiley and for consideration of moving the Wiley project forward. So what we're presenting to you tonight are 4 options, or really what the bond plan was, and then 3 options for making a modification to the Wiley design and construction schedule. We're, again, laying these options out to you, not making a recommendation, but just giving you these options to take a look at. Before we start that piece of it, I want to kind of some of the phasing stuff that went into developing this Wiley plan. So this bond was put together in 2014, 2015 for the voters to vote on in 2016. And when we did that, when we developed that process, we had to kind of come up with what some phasing pieces would look like for all the projects in the bond, not just the Wiley project, but we took a broad, if you will, 50,000 foot view of all the projects we had going on. So we kind of got an idea of what it would take to build the project. So, you know, some of those were 2 to 3 years away, some of them were 4, 5, 6 years away. As you know, this bond is an 8-year bond. So we have to look well into the crystal ball to try to figure out how things are going. Those things change. There are some design issues that come up, some design opportunities that come up that allow us to do things a little bit more efficiently. So what you have here is how that bond was set up, how we set the bond up for the Wiley phasing project. We need to do a mechanical system design. That's a 4 to 7 month process. That's part of the overall design process. That's something we knew we would have to do. We've got to move the boiler from the Wiley gym somewhere so that the gym can be demoed so that you can put a new gymnasium at Wiley Middle School. Then another part of that is the design of the Wiley addition. That is an 8 to 10 month process as well. That's factored into the mechanical design. Those 2 design groups work together with our planning staff and with our construction team. Again, part of the phasing that we did as we developed the bond is that the boiler would need to be relocated before demolition of the gymnasium could occur. So knowing that was going to have to happen, we knew in planning for the bond, in planning for the Wiley Gymnasium construction, monies would have to be allocated for a boiler. That boiler that's setting in the Wiley gym it provides heat to Wiley Middle School. And you'll see a little bit more of that as we get a little bit further into this. And then lastly, the demolition of the gymnasium would need to occur before the Wiley Gymnasium could be built. The Wiley Gymnasium overlaps where the new Wiley Gymnasium overlaps where the existing gymnasium is. What you see here is an overall, an aerial view of Wiley Middle School. You can see where the existing gymnasium is located. You can also see, kind of what the access around the property looks like. I do want to apologize. The north and the south lots have been altered. I'm not going to apologize for that. We've heard some good comments about how those improvements have been made. This does not reflect the changes that were made to Northwest Boulevard in those lots. Haven't got Google Maps or the updated shots of the aerial, and I'm trying to pitch for a drone, but I haven't gotten that either. So we have to go on this old aerial photo. Next slide kind of zooms in a little bit on Wiley Magnet School and give you an idea of where the boiler is located in the gymnasium. You hear a lot of talk about the boiler and where the gym is, and so you can kind of see from here where this boiler room is located. There are 2 boilers actually in the Wiley Gymnasium. There's a boiler that serves the gymnasium itself on the lower level, and then on the upper level there's a boiler that serves Wiley Middle School. That boiler has 2 6-inch diameter lines that run from the boiler room into Wiley Middle School, and you can see the path of those lines. Those lines are about 2 to 3 feet deep. They're not very deep. They're not deep into the earth. So where the Wiley Gymnasium addition would go is virtually on top of where these lines are. Option 1, as I mentioned earlier, is basically the construction per the 2016 bond plan. Again, this is how we phased it, and this is how we thought what the process would look like as we're 3 or 4 or 5 years ago as we're developing this bond. Do the design and permitting beginning in March of this year. It's about a 11, 12 month process. The boiler would be removed, and I've got the word provide an alternative heat source. I need to kind of clarify. Maybe it's better stated that alternative would be better defined as a permanent heat source. So I'm using the word alternative heat source not as in a temporary nature, but as something permanent would have to be done to Wiley Middle School to provide heat into the middle school building proper. So that would be the plan was to take that boiler to provide a new boiler for the Wiley Middle School beginning in May, and having another heat source up and running by October of 2020, next calendar year. Then following that, the Wiley Gymnasium would be demolished and the new addition would start. Demolition anticipated for June, July of 2020, and construction running through February of 2022. Occupancy of the new Wiley Gym around in spring of 2022. Option 2A, we're labeling as an accelerated construction schedule with a no added cost option. Design and permitting would fall about in the same lines, but it's a little bit of an accelerated time. The design would start in February of 2019 and run through October of 2019. We would construct and install a new alternative heat source starting in October of 2019 and running through May of 2020. If you're doing an alternative heat source and it's in an occupied building and you have restrictions on where you can work in that building, it significantly reduces or significantly increases the time that it's going to take you to do the replacement. We had proposed in the original phasing to do that in the summer when you can have free access to a building and unrestricted. We could access the building and do what we needed to do. If we need to do something in Wiley, it could be done with no students present. If that's done during the school year and we have to move kids, we have to relocate them to different areas while we work on certain floors, then it affects our durations. The Wiley Gym would be demolished in June of 2020, and the new addition would begin to be completed late 2021 with occupancy in spring of 2022. The alternative heat source would again take place October through March while kids are in the school. So that's something we had tried to avoid in our original bond phasing of starting this process in the summer. The biggest differences between what you see in 2A and the original bond plan, the Wiley Gym and the Wiley Gym boiler and constructing a new addition moves up by a few months from June 2020 to July 2020. So that's the biggest changes you can notice there, and the design status kind of occurs about 1 or 2 months sooner. So we pick up 2 to 3 months with that no cost option. Option 2B is the accelerated construction schedule with an added cost option. This would involve design and permitting for the Wiley addition to begin in February of 2019 and run through October of 2019. This also would include the installation of a temporary boiler in October of 2019 of this calendar year. We can't get a new mechanical system designed and ready to do the Wiley heating by this coming warming or this coming cooling or heating season. So we need to have that in place by October of any calendar year. Roughly, that's about the time that you need to start providing heat into buildings, is around October. We're not going to be able to provide an alternative permanent heating source for Wiley in that short amount of time. So that's why we would have done a little research on installing a temporary boiler that could be brought in, and we have generated cost estimates of about $325,000 for that option to be done. The Wiley Gymnasium would then be demolished following the installation of this temporary boiler. We would demolish the gym and the boiler room and construct a new addition beginning in November of 2019 for completion June of 2021 with occupancy in the new Wiley Gym for the summer of 2021. So, give you another overview of the area to kind of show you where options 1, 2A, and 2B kind of fall as it relates to the site, to the area I showed you earlier. You see in blue the proposed area of the Wiley Gym addition, and again, that's still fluid. But we're trying to give you an outline of about where that gymnasium addition would be. You can see some dash lines. The red dash lines indicate where the students that are riding the buses would be going. They would go out. There's a door that's not really a highly traveled door now for entry and exit of the school, but could be used for entry and exit for students. They would go out that door, walk through the parking lot, go down Northwest Boulevard to access the bus lot where it's currently located, what we refer to as the south lot, which on your sheet is to the right of the blue building. The purple dash indicates what the car riders would do. They're being picked up and dropped off in morning and afternoon. They would still maintain their current flow. There's no change to what they've got going on now. That traffic goes through the lot, what we refer to as the north lot, and they would follow that same traffic pattern. The travel direction to the auxiliary gymnasium, which is what the Wiley students would use for PE and other activities, would be along the green dash line. They would walk down Northwest Boulevard and access the auxiliary gym that way. Option 3 is the accelerated demolition schedule with the original construction schedule. This does come with an added cost. We would immediately begin, or could immediately begin, the design of the existing boiler room shoring. So the proposal here would be leave the boiler room where it exists in the current existing Wiley Gymnasium. So the shoring, just to kind of give you a brief overview of what that is a way to maintain the integrity of the structure that's housing the building. So we would actually use the walls of the existing Wiley Gymnasium, do a structural analysis of those walls to determine what could stay and what would have to be reinforced once the Wiley Gymnasium comes down. So part of the gymnasium has to come down for any construction that's going on for the gymnasium, for the new addition, or the possibility of a stadium. So that shoring and weatherproofing the boiler room would be done this summer to prepare the gymnasium to be demolished beginning in October. We would need to maintain that the boiler would still be operational when that heating season begins in October. So the demolition would occur October through December. The design and permitting for the Wiley addition would run somewhat concurrently with the boiler room shoring. And that would start February, March of 2019 at the time we're in now, and probably go for about another 8 to 10 months, depending on how elaborate we've got to get with some of our designs and coordinate with the boiler room addition. Demolishing the boiler room and constructing the new addition, again, like I said, the boiler room has to be demolished before the new addition can be built. So that would be delayed until July of 2020. So the actual demolition of the boiler room and the construction of the new addition would not happen until July of 2020, back to the original construction schedule for completion April 22 and occupancy in June of 2022. We have estimated a cost of $600,000 based on a couple items that's involved in the shoring and weatherproofing of the boiler room and the additional cost for staging and accessibility to the site. You can see in this view, if you've got the Wiley Gym addition located at the same location it was for options 1, 2A, and 2B, the difference here is we would need to utilize the bus parking lot as a construction laydown area for the Wiley addition. Doing that changes the bus pattern. Buses would need to line up along Northwest Boulevard. There's been some question about whether they could use the lot to the north. So that lot was designed that half of it can withstand bus traffic and half of it can withstand car traffic only. And if you've been to Wiley, and I don't see Mrs. Bodenheimer in the room, but if you've been to Wiley, you know that parking lot, the north parking lot, is completely crowded at pickup and drop off every day. So we feel like the safest option for bus unloading in this scenario would be along Northwest Boulevard. You can then also see, and the reason they're parked on both sides, you've got some that are westbound on Northwest and some that are eastbound, and it's just going to be a matter of where the buses are coming from to make it safest for the kids to unload. The green dash line again represents where the kids will be traveling to go to the auxiliary gym. We don't feel comfortable from a perspective of safety of having them walk along what we refer to as the south side of Northwest Boulevard, which is the Wiley side of Northwest Boulevard, just because of it being adjacent to a construction site. There will be constant traffic in and out of what is now the south bus lot, and I don't feel comfortable with that amount of traffic coming in to put kids walking along that south side of Northwest Boulevard. So what I've got here for you are some options to consider. There's a couple other pages in your presentation, I think, that basically summarizes everything I said here. There's a bar chart schedule that kind of shows you all the options with the colors coordinated to match depending on what option you're looking at, and then there's a matrix that refers to, just kind of summarizes everything in a table format. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
being a contractor, I have a question on weather relations as far as when is the best time to start this, and as far as weather conditions. As you know now, a lot of the snow that we've had has really held a lot of the projects up. So I can't help but wonder on these options as far as starting and stopping and where we are on weather relations on that, as to what you would think would be the best time to start this project.
Well, the way we phased the construction for this project was to do the demolition in the summer. We wanted to do the biggest part of the demolition when the kids weren't in the building. And then another factor to that was the mechanical piece. That mechanical piece obviously would need to happen in the summer because you don't want to renovate a mechanical system during the winter when you need to have heat. So a lot of that was based on working and making it the safest environment for the students. As far as the weather goes, we've learned, because of the year 2018, it rains all the time. So we don't really know. I mean, you understand as being in a contracting business, it's been a very different year. So it is ideal to not bring a building, use the word out of the ground, or to be doing footing and excavation work in late fall or winter. But our bigger concern here was working around what the students would be as far as demolishing the existing gymnasium.
And will you go over again where there is absolutely no additional cost on the 4 areas that you've given us?
Well, I think option 1 is basically the bond option. That's what the bond option is. Option 2A is making a change to the schedule with no added cost, and that basically gains you about 2 to 3 months by kind of working harder, getting the design done faster, and it allows you to start construction at about the same time, maybe allow you to do the demolition a couple months sooner and start construction a little bit sooner to gain about 2 months on your construction time. Option 2B is a $325,000 price tag. It's what we've estimated for a temporary boiler. And then option 3 would be the option where you would do a demolition and then you would wait for a period of time and then start the construction. And that's an estimated $600,000.
Thank you, Colin.
I had a question about I-40 and not I-40, Salem Parkway. When Salem Parkway is supposed to be operational, and is there any disruption with any of these plans that are more likely to be difficult on Northwest?
That was a smaller factor. Our bigger push was to get Northwest Boulevard renovation done before they shut Business 40 down, and I do understand now that they're working towards some acceleration of that schedule. And if I'm not mistaken, and I can stand to be corrected, but I think the completion is slated for spring of 2020, I think is about the time that's supposed to start. So that would coincide with about when we would plan on having the Wiley construction start.
So the if I'm correct, in option 1, the demolition would be starting after you expect 40 to be completed. And the reason I'm concerned is that right now there is so much increased traffic on Northwest Boulevard, and that a demolition is, of course, going to be bringing in construction equipment. So if Northwest is just one of the alternative sites people are using much more than they will after Salem Parkway is operational.
Yes, assuming that my understanding of the Salem Parkway renovation is correct, that they're going to be finishing late spring, summer of 2020, then our gym demolition under option 1 and option 2A would start about the time that was reopening.
How much time did you and your department spend on putting together this package, which buys us maybe 2 months on one school?
I honestly, Ms. Bramright, I can't quantify that. I mean, it's I've tried to make some presentations to you that we were asked to provide some information. So all the time just flows together. I do it for joy.
Great answer. That was perfect.
I don't really quantify, I mean, I've invested the amount of time I needed to provide some information, and I hope it's somewhat beneficial for your use, but I don't really know how to answer your question.
I have I need some clarification, maybe you can help me, or Leah, you can. I think today, so when we left the January 22nd meeting, the committee had voted to move up, I think it was to move up the Wiley Gym. We had conversation around, it was funded by a bond, so if we're going to really move it up, I think Darrell Walker, maybe Dr. Emery talked about there's a process, you have to go to the county commissioner. So I think there was just a lot of what did move up actually mean. And Elizabeth talked about wanting to know what costs were. And so anyway, we voted to move it up to today when we were getting ready to open the Building and Grounds Committee. Ms. Crowley said that we were looking at moving up, just releasing money for the design. And so if we're just looking to release money for the design, that falls into which option?
2A, I would put that in option 2A or in option 1.
So option, that's what I was asking. And so the other options that I'm assuming someone asked you to provide is just what are just other options that are out there that we could look at. But to just release design money, that's the original one that would be like what it's scheduled to do on the bond now. And then the next one that I think Ms. Calvert-Hayes said, and that was the one that there's no additional funds. Is that where we are? If I'm trying to get that in my mind, that's really all we were asking for, those are the two options that fall into that category.
Right. I think our direction from Building and Grounds on the 22nd was, I think as you worded it, was to move the Wiley project forward. Right. So what we wanted to do was present to you, to present to the board what the options would be that we see would be options for consideration, some involving additional funding, some not.
Okay. But just if we were just asking to release funds for design, it would be 2A or 2B.
Be 1 or 2A. Yeah,
one, yes.
Well, 1 is the original
option
bond.
One,
it'd really be 2A.
Option 1 or option 2A.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. That's just clarifying.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, do we have any worry that if we were to choose option 2A, say, as opposed to the regular schedule, that any other projects will be impacted negatively in any way?
No,
it
ma'am.
sounds like no cost to move it up 2 or 3 months.
That's correct.
And you're telling me that nobody else is affected?
That's correct.
And the funds that are released would automatically be coming?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, at the beginning of our presentation, we put a bond together late 2014, 2015 for the vote in 2016. Now it's 2019. In 2015, we tried to make projections on what that cash flow would look like, because we don't just get $350 million dumped into our bank account. It comes to us in phases. So we've got to make sure that our projects are scheduled in a way that we've got money to pay for. Not many contractors or architects are going to work for you for nothing for a few months. So that's what that piece looks like. So today meaning January, February 2019, we're able to get a better handle on exactly what that cash flow looks like the first 2 years. We're able to get a better handle on what those design costs, those construction costs look like, more so than we were able 3 or 4 years ago. So we can better pin down what our cash flow looks like when we need to have that money in our account to make these payments. That's why I can say now this is a conversation that's different if we had it 6 months ago. It's just the fluidity of the market. So I think we can make this statement that option 2A comes with no additional cost or impact to other bond projects.
One more question. So the original option 1 that was in the timeline for the bond, it has an occupancy date of spring of 2022, which is the same occupancy date as option 2A, which is spring of 2022. right? So
Yes.
we're going to move it up, but the kids aren't going to be in the building until the same time. And I mean, I know weather, we just talked about weather.
Right.
And all that stuff, but there's no, it doesn't accelerate them into the gym any sooner.
So we anticipate, in option one, we'd anticipate an occupancy of May 2022. And again, this is me looking into that 3 year from now crystal ball. But we anticipate an occupancy in May of 2022. In option 2A, we feel like we could have an occupancy in early March of 2022. So that's thus the spring.
Okay.
So we call it spring, but we allow spring to be a period of 3 months. It's a little contractor trick I learned.
I have a question. As somebody who sees the big picture on construction, do you consider option 2A to be an improvement on option 1, having revisited it?
I mean, we're able, after looking at the cash flow and where we are with cash and where we anticipate cash being in 1 and 2 years, then we feel like we can move forward in option 2A with no detriment to what
So I was asking a slightly different question than that. My question I don't know a thing about construction really, so, you know, I played with Lincoln Logs. That's my last experience of building things. So my question is, you who look at construction, do you consider option 2A an improvement over option 1 as far as workflow and doing things in a timely manner? Is that a better option? Is that an improvement? Or is it just a difference?
I think as a contractor, I'm really hesitating on making a recommendation. I don't want to make a recommendation, I just want to state facts, but I feel like with option 2A, knowing what we know today, I think that's an improvement on the schedule. Knowing where we are with cash flow, I think we can say that that's a good use.
And clarify for me just one thing. I wrote down, and I'm not sure if 2A, which doesn't cost any additional money and buys you 2 additional months, is there disruption to the learning and inside the school with that option?
Option 2A has a gym demolition in the summer, so we won't be doing demo during school time. We'll be doing it during summer, and it actually gets that class of kids that may, if it didn't occupy until May, and school's out May, June, you may have a class that never got to spend that time in the new gym. They'll have a couple months in the new gym if we could occupy early March of 2022. Yes, ma'am.
I know that we have our 2 contractors already selected on this job, but have these bids been gone out to subcontractors yet on that? And can we save any monies by moving this project up? How do you see that?
We're really not. Right now, we're just in budgeting phase. Any conversations that's happened with subcontractors have been purely from a broad-based perspective, of them just trying to get their hands around what the cost would be. This board has selected the contractor for the Wiley Gym addition in a CM at risk environment, but they have only had, to my knowledge, had conversations with their subcontractors on a broad base. I can't speak to what conversations the contractor for the stadium has had with his subcontractors.
I just wondered about the money involved in this, if there was any way, we could cut any cost. I'm always looking at the money.
I think both scenarios give you the opportunity to maybe do that because of the procurement methods, to try to know where you are budget-wise and to try to I'm going to use the word value engineer, to value engineer some portions of the project as would be feasible.
Okay. Thank you again, Carla.
So I have a question too. While the cost is absolutely important, I'm also very concerned about the children in the school. And given that this school is the middle school for the visually impaired and it does have issues with the gym, and it looks like option 2B would finish a full year earlier. I'm just wondering, is there a price we're putting on our disabled students and putting them off for another year in a facility? And our regular students. I have a regular 6th grader there who is in a pretty horrible facility. What are your thoughts there, Colin?
Well, again, as I said, when we put the phasing together, we phase it so to base where we were with money. Moving it a year would have an impact to cash flow in some way, not just in the additional expenditure of money for a temporary boiler. But I think it will impact the cash flow because you're basically moving the project up a year in the cash flow scenario, and then your funding that comes from the different phases would go out accordingly.
Okay, and what's our agreement with, to be in compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act? What date did we give them for completion of the gym?
I'm going to have to.
That's
an attorney question.
Okay.
So, I don't know the microphone, but according to the resolution agreement, the understanding that we move forward with our regular plans, the plans that have been arranged for in the bond for the completion. There was not an agreement or understanding to change that construction date on the OCR agreement.
Okay.
I think they want you to repeat that.
So just to repeat that. She's not on.
So just to repeat that, under the OCR agreement, there was not an expectation or an understanding that we would change our present construction plans.
What was the date that was given to them that the completion would be?
The date for construction would begin in 2020, and that would be completed by 2022, which I believe was the same date that was with the original plans.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments for Colin? Thank you. Next, we will have the Finance Committee report from Board Member Deanna Kaplan.
Our Finance Committee met today, and Frida Lashmet reviewed and gave us the background information to the Budget Amendment Number 4 and Transfer Number 4. This information can be found online for those who would like to see more details. Kim Slusher gave us a budget update for the upcoming 2019-2020 budget. Our budget meetings with the different departments are set to begin February 25th through mid-March. Kim Slusher also gave us an update from the Formula Review Committee chaired by Elizabeth Motzinger. The minutes from the Formula Review Committee can be found online for those who would like to see additional details. It was a pretty quick meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Buildings and Grounds Committee report from Board Member Leah Crowley.
Thank you. We started our meeting with just clarifying some of the questions that were about the January 22nd Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, when we voted to advance the Wiley addition by 3.5 months. Some facts had been misconstrued or speculated speculated outcomes were a result of this project. After meeting and discussing the project, the Buildings and Grounds Committee realized that without a plan and a design, the Wiley addition project could not be spec'd. And without project specifications, we can't make informed decisions regarding safe movement of students, sequencing the work, or locating the systems, like the new HAV system, for example. The only way to get a plan and a design is to release money to cover that cost, as architects do work for payment. It is untrue to suggest that funds for more than the plan and design of the Wiley addition were approved. We approved moving forward so that we could get more information, so that we can make better decisions and be better stewards of the bond money voted on by you and me. We also discussed a change order with Parkland High School. That costs us $31,000, but it does stay within the budget of that project, and that is a bond project. For Conowick Elementary, we had a change order that resulted in a $270,000 credit. And that was in reference to a stormwater retention pond that was no longer needed. We also discussed the Tomahawk Creek easement, which we discussed in a previous board meeting, but there was an additional property that needed the easement agreement, and that's all at Louisville Middle School. And we will be voting on that later. We discussed Ashley Academy. We are having 2 community meetings. One is Monday, February 18th from 2:30 to 3:30. And the second one is on Thursday, February 21st from 5:30 to 6:30. We'll be inviting parents, neighbors, community members to come hear about the new Ashley. And our chair expressed the intent of this board to move toward constructing a new Ashley. We also discussed Brunson. There'll be a public meeting February 25th at 6 p.m. in the Brunson Gym. The only holdup for that project right now is identifying land. And we want to be able to talk to parents of students there and parents that are in the HAG program to discuss the future location for that. We also discussed some sustainability efforts that we're looking at, and we were given reports that we are on time for schools to be completed for the summer of 2019, and that's the Lawrence Paisley Middle School and the Conowick Elementary.
Thank you. Our next item is an action item, which is the consider approval of the Tomahawk Creek sewer easement. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Who had the first motion? Me. Crowley. Okay. Who did the second? I just want to make sure that carefully. Okay. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. The next item is approval for the highlighted consent agenda items. If we just quickly look through those, if we can have a motion to approve all of the highlighted items.
So moved.
That was Board Member Crowley. Second by Board Member Clark. I'm sorry. All in favor? Passed unanimously. All right. The next item is meeting open to the public, and I hope you all don't mind that I'm going to take sort of a chair privilege.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.